In this section, we're going to go over the framework for your practice. This is just a framework, so truly modify this to what works for you. You'll spend the next 30 days to maybe your lifetime really making it yours. Honor yourself in this process, honor your needs. I'm going to teach it the way it might be most common for people, but that doesn't mean it's going to be the right way for you. The first thing we're going to talk about is something called non-negotiables. In this video, I'm going to start to walk you through setting up your non-negotiables. And I wanted to start by inviting you to think about what happens in your day when you wake up and you don't have a lot of time before you have to leave the house. You feel unprepared, you're rushing around. How conscious or grounded do you feel when you imagine or think about your mornings that are like this? How do you end up showing up in the day? How is your sense of clarity and focus? How perceptive are you to the external things that are happening around you, maybe the more subtle things? Are you able to receive cues from the universe, from your internal guidance system, or pick up on the cues of opportunities that are coming up, or maybe just other people? The biggest commitment I am going to ask of you in this program is to commit to what we call the non-negotiables. If you do nothing else, focus on mastering these non-negotiables. How I started to call them non-negotiables is pretty funny, and I was having some health challenges with my immune system. And I went in and my doctor tested me and told me I needed to stop doing gluten and dairy. And this was way before it was popular and there was anything available. So immediately what that did for me was make me have to cook at home almost every single meal, which was very, let's just say, not my excitement or happy joy place. And so for 2 years it went on where I would be gluten-free for about 2 weeks, and then the weekend would come, and like every other weekend I would just eat some gluten, and I wasn't getting better. And it's like every other weekend I would have to go through this process of saying, maybe I'm not really gluten-free, maybe I can do this. And then like I'd feel all of the wrath of it and realize, oh yeah, I should. And then I'd try it again 2 weeks later. So my doctor started to get really frustrated with me. And one day she sat me down and she looked me in the eye and she got frustrated and said, this is what happens when you eat gluten. And she explained the process of how it destroys my internal gut system. And it was like a snap in my head. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, well, why didn't you say that in the first place? Like, done. And from that moment on, it became non-negotiable that I would not be eating gluten. And all of a sudden, it got way easier to manage cooking at home. I became way less resentful and sorry for myself. And I didn't start going off my diet every other week. It was so much easier. So this introduced this concept of non-negotiables to me, and I started to create non-negotiables in my own life. These are the things I do every day. It's non-negotiable. I don't get a choice. I just do them. And it's been a really effective way to start habits. So the definition of a non-negotiable is that it's a new habit. So clarification, it's not like brushing your teeth, which you're doing every day already. It's a new habit that you're adding into the routine that creates more space for conscious living. So a new habit you're adding into your routine to create more space for conscious living. All right, let's talk about a few things that might make a huge impact in your morning and your evening. So we're gonna do some non-negotiables in the morning, non-negotiables in the evening. One of the keys for setting this up is don't pick more than 2 to 4 non-negotiables at a time. We don't want to make this such a high bar that it feels impossible to stay consistent with. So just pick a couple things that are going to make an impact. And as you get those things down, maybe once a week you add something more, or in a few weeks you'll reassess and add some other things in. So for your morning non-negotiables, One thing is going to be the building blocks. I suggest in the morning. If you absolutely are not the morning person and they don't work for you then, no problem. You can do them in the afternoon. But I really recommend things be in the morning because it starts to put that awareness in your mind before you go throughout the day. So, morning non-negotiables is going to be something like maybe move your body for 10 minutes. It might be doing a writing project. It might be reading. It might be nourishing yourself in some way. Something that helps you take care of yourself, do some self-love, sending yourself the message that like, I'm okay, I'm safe, there's time to honor myself before you go into the hubbub of the day. I'll give you an example of when I was starting this process and training myself to become a morning person, is that my only requirement of my morning was that I made it down the stairs by a certain time and drank my tea while watching the news. And I'm not a big news person, but for some reason at that moment in time, that non-negotiable worked for me. I could manage to crawl out of my bed, crawl downstairs, and get my tea. So it can be something as simple as that, just something really wonderful and delicious. And I was not a morning person, so I had to make my first thing of the morning be really enticing. Now let's think about some evening non-negotiables. These are often the most important aspects of your practice. If you do the evening non-negotiables, you're setting yourself up for success in the morning. You're setting your whole day up for success of being more conscious and aware. So these are the most important things. A great example for an evening one is setting up your tea and your tea bag and like water in the tea kettle the night before. It might be setting up your sacred meditation space, wherever that's going to be, making sure it's clear, making sure the things that you need are there. For me, a huge game changer, because I'm an entrepreneur and it's really easy for me to leave my laptop and everything out and basically work till 10 p.m. or not work till 10 p.m., but it's all still sitting there. One of the game changers for me was putting my pajamas on, I turn the light on next to my bed, and I pack up all my work stuff for the next day. This has really helped me learn how to rest down in my own home, because I think I was really chronically stuck in that sympathetic stress state until I added that non-negotiable in. Another thing is I make sure my practice space is set up, and I've gone to the extreme of getting one of those electric teapots right in my meditation room, so everything's right there ready for me to go, because I am not a morning person by nature, and so I have tried every book in the trick. I've got lots of tips if you need them. Some other evening non-negotiables, if you have children, might be to start some non-negotiables with the kids, some routines around packing up their bags, or having things done by a certain time of the evening. Anything that's going to help you preserve your sacred space. This is the point. All right, some parameters around these just to help you know if you're on track. Again, 1 or 2 to get started. And once they become mastered, maybe they aren't your focus or non-negotiables. So again, I'll use the example of brushing your teeth. This isn't something you need written on your list. Most of us just do it. We don't have to be told, we don't have to be reminded. It's a part of the habit already. So if it becomes a part of the habit, maybe it doesn't have to be on there. It's just what you do now. So have it be stuff that you're really consciously committing to adding as a new habit or a sacred ritual into your life. Another thing that is important is when you skip something, it just doesn't happen for whatever reason, don't worry about it. Just move back into it the next day. We are such a perfection culture, and diets and things like that, we throw the baby out with the bathwater. If we miss something, it's like we get way off the wagon. And your practice is not going to be like this. You're going to have a practice forever. I've had a practice for 20 years. I always get off the wagon. Whenever I travel, that can trip things up, or something crazy is going on, or sleep issues. It doesn't take away from the fact that I have a sacred practice that is a part of my life. So just don't worry about those things. Again, evening ones are the most important. They're the ones that are the biggest commitment to, and sometimes easiest because we're already up doing things. And I want you to also think about your non-negotiables as the bare minimum versus the ideal practice. So we're going to talk about some of the other components that you might add into the structure of your practice, and there's lots of other things you might want to do, but the non-negotiables are it's like the message to yourself of, if I just do these, at least I've done what I need to do for my practice. So some days you're only going to get done your non-negotiables and your building blocks. Other days you'll maybe have an extra hour or two and you can do some of the yummy reading and other practices and rituals that you love. Okay, so your 30-day challenge is going to start with your non-negotiables. So take today or this week to dedicate and commit to setting yourself up for success with your non-negotiables. Again, sometimes you gotta try a few things, see what works, doesn't work, tweak them. You probably will be tweaking them for the whole 30 days. But spend some time today, write them down, and go get yourself set up to implement. When you're ready, start your 30 days.